Paul Johannes Niz, and you have a studio in Norway with your family on a island off the Norwegian coast. Tell us about your work there in Norway and with EWTN.
Yes, thank you for having me, Father. We are a family of my wife, and we just had a new baby, so we have 3 kids, age 45 days, 3 years and 5 years, living in Norway. We started, it's a long story, so you have to stop me but we started, the first day I met my wife, I met her at church coffee in our parish, and she's Hungarian and I'm Norwegian, and we were sitting and drinking coffee. After a while I dared to sit down together with her and say hi, and the first thing we were talking about was that her sister was doing Catholic radio in Hungary, and what joy it was for her to spread the word of Jesus to other people. So that was the first conversation I had with my future wife. It was about doing Catholic radio. And then after a while we got to the point where we found out that maybe we should proceed with our relationship and get engaged. I had a quite different life before I became a Catholic. So what you would call here in the US, I had a Las Vegas wedding, which I had to sort out. And I went through the case with the tribunal, and we never got an answer. And we were unsure if God wanted us to proceed a life together or not. So we decided to say a novena to Saint Rita. We started praying, and in that novena you promised to make the name of Saint Rita known, no matter what the outcome will be. And on the final day of the novena, we got the answer from the tribunal that we were free. I was free to get married again. And that was a great blessing. So we got engaged. It was not the most romantic proposal. It was the day after. We couldn't wait. So we got engaged really quick. And we started marriage preparation with our priest. And then we got married. And then we were thinking about how can we honor the promise we gave to Saint Rita. And God was so good to us that 9 months after we got married, we got our first baby. And then we found out that, okay, we can call her Lea Rita after, we have always, with all the girls, we have the first name is from the Old Testament, and then it's from a saint. So we choose then to give her the name of Rita in a way to honor this, the name of the promise we gave to Saint Rita. And then after that we talked more and more about radio. And then we had a meeting with the bishop, and he was positive, but he didn't, as long as it didn't cost him any money or any priest, we could do what we wanted. And it was a little bit back and forward, and then COVID came, and all the church were closed down. So then we found out that this is the time to do it. So then we put out on Facebook that on the 22nd of May, this was the 21st of May in 2020, the first year of COVID, we would start a radio station. So we proclaimed it. And then after we Googled how to start a radio station. But God was very good to us. He helped us all the way. So on the feast of Saint Rita, we had our first broadcast of a live mass, which was and then we called the station Saint Rita Radio in order to promote Saint Rita and thank her for the help she gave us.
And this mass was in a local parish?
Yes, it was in our local parish. We had one person listening. So
Is there a parish on the island you're on? Or?
No,
Oh.
but hopefully there will be. But we are not so many Catholic. We have about an hour to the church in Ålesund, so that's our local church.
And is it a boat ride, or do you have a bridge?
Yeah, we have a bridge now.
Okay.
So we drive to every Sunday morning. It's quite chaotic between 8:45 and 9 when everyone is getting into the car, and then we drive to our parish, and then we have a Sunday as a different day. And I think that is actually very important, that even though it's a long travel, we go to Mass, but then we do something special as a family. Either we have a picnic or we go somewhere with the kids, and then we have the family dinner after.
Right.
So using Sunday as a different day, that I think it gives you peace in a different way. You need a day to relax. And relaxing is not watching TV or sitting in. You have to be together with your family. And I think that is our mission in EWTN in Norway, is to promote Jesus, to promote God and the Catholic Church, but it's also very important for us to promote the family. Every time we go to a parish or something to talk about EWTN, we always go as a family to show that it is a family project and the children has a place in church. And if we stop taking our children to church, then they will fall away from the faith, and then this makes no sense to do if the price is that the children will not be in church.
Right. And how many people are there in this? Like, you have volunteers helping you, and how many do you have working with you?
Yeah, now it's me and my wife. We just got a baby, so she's obviously not working. And then we have 2 volunteers living with us full-time from India, which is a funny story in itself. And then across Norway, we have last year we had 104 people volunteering, either to make podcast or to make video, different types of program, text, translate. So we've been very blessed with the help of many volunteers. They are, and that's also a part of the EWTN DNA, or what you can call it. It is a family. The concept of family is not something we just say. We actually act as a family.
Right.
And I think that's a great strength. I remember my way into the Catholic faith was through EWTN, and sitting there and see Mother talking about the family. That made a big impact on me.
Yeah, to me that's like, it's at the heart of, I think, EWTN, that people volunteering or coming. We're in Irondale, Birmingham, and people come and make shows. They've had this powerful experience of God. They have a converted life, and there's a unity that comes about, I think, in the faith, and that's I think that's what makes it work. And so, like, I guess you went from radio to television, and so. Is it mostly translated, or how much of your own original programming do you do?
We're in the transaction now from going to radio to television. We started with radio and then expand to podcast. Podcast is excellent tools for us because we have big distance. People are spending a lot of time in cars. Yeah. We started with doing the liturgy of the hour as a podcast, which I think prayer has to be the foundation. And then a year and a half ago, we got in contact with EWTN and started to expand the possibilities of doing more video. And we are in Irondale now, and one of the reasons for that is that we've been working on how we can get 24/7 TV stream up and running. So hopefully we launched EWTN in Norway on the 29th of July last year. So we are hoping to be live with the TV stream on the 29th.
So right now you have some video like through a website that's going
Yeah,
on?
we have YouTube, and we have different on-demand services on our webpage. And we started the testing of the live stream right before Christmas. So we have to get that, and that will be very, very exciting to get that up. It's the first time there will be a Catholic TV in Norway,
Right.
or in the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah. And so do you have any original programming yet? Or?
Yes, we have. We make every day we have evening prayer and rosary live from our studio, and then we make 4 programs a week in Norwegian.
Oh, okay. Oh wow.
So now we.
So you have a studio.
We have a studio on the island, and as we speak now, we have in Bergen, one of the city we're working in. They're doing a shoot with 2 priests, a simple catechesis program, and one about theology of the body. But that is all done by volunteers, and it's amazing how the Holy Spirit is sending us people who can help us.
Wow. They're mostly lay people, or you have some priests?
We have 2 monasteries that are helping us out on a regular basis, and we have 5 priests doing program for us every month, more or less. So that's also what is so beautiful with the concept of family, is that even though we don't go around saying you're a part of our family, but we bought that house on the island where we are because it's a big house. It's an old house, but we can have a lot of people there. So people are coming to visit us almost every weekend. And we have the 2 volunteers from India. So that makes it into a real family where we can eat and pray together. And we have the priests coming and helping us. And in many ways, I think it's so beautiful, because the church today is much about politics. It's much about polarization, this and that and all this. But for us, this project is about showing the faith, and most of all, praying together. And I think that we as a society, as leaders in Norway, we have forgotten that it's important to pray. It's good to go to, it's perfect to go to Sunday Mass, and all these things are important, but we need to sit down together and pray. And our 3-year-old, she always says grace at our house. And she says this in a combination of English, Hungarian, and Norwegian. And even though if we have priests or bishops eating with us, she always do the praying. I remember once we had a bishop visiting us, and he was going to get ready and bless, and she just, no, this is my job. So I think, and that also bring the children with us. It's our responsibility to learn our children the faith. And our children, they are crying in church, and they are behaving bad as normal children. But I remember there was one old lady who came and said to me that, take your child out, she's crying. And then I said to her that, yes, of course I can do that, but remember, it's our children who will pray for us in purgatory. So if I take her out of the church, she will not be used to being in church, and then we have one less person praying for us when we are in purgatory. She looked at me and said, okay. Yeah.
Do you all pray the liturgy of the hours, or the Christian prayer or something?
Yeah, we don't do all the liturgy of the hours as a family, but I try to do it, at least Laudes and Vesper and Completorum. I see, if I don't pray, if it's much to do with work, and then I sin more.
Yeah.
And if I don't pray, then I do stupid sins, and then I don't pray when I've done that, and it's an evil circle. And that's why I think the liturgy of the hour, or the daily rosary, is so important, because it's not every time you want to pray or feel like praying, or many times I'm thinking, oh, it's much more important to do this or this or this. But if you have the time schedule of praying, then at least you do it. And I hope and I think that it's better to do an unconcentrated rosary than to don't do it. Mm-hmm. That's at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a challenge with the family.
Yeah. Yes, but we are so lucky that we live in the second and the third floor, and we have the studio under us. Mm. And we also made oratorium, a room for praying, mm-hmm. so we can take the family down there, and it's good.
And I imagine, is this like a lighthouse with big stone brick house or some kind of?
No, it's an old shoe factory. They were selling shoes in the basement, and we're living upstairs. Ah. So it's.
How old is the house, roughly?
It's built in 1910 or something.
Oh, wow.
So, and we came there on an impulse. At that time you had to take a boat to get there when we moved there. And we were a little bit unsure what to do. And then we came out, it was the one sunny day of the year. There was no wind, the temperature was hot.
God had to sell it to you, right?
And we just looked at each other and said, okay, we're doing this. And when we bought the house, we found out there was water leakage, the electricity was wrong, and she'd been opening all the doors so we wouldn't smell the mug when we came in. And all that. So, but I think I had a very different life before I became a Catholic. I was living a life where I was working as a banker. We had a morning meeting every day where we had this creed. Our credo was that the one who has the most when we die, he's the winner.
You literally say that?
Yeah, every morning.
Is that in Oslo, or were you?
No, that was in Bergen. I was working in there, and then we was kind of very. It was important: money, cars, girls, and all these things, alcohol. But I always felt that there was something missing in my life. I couldn't know what it was, but I was never satisfied. So we always had to do more, and more, and more, and more, and more. And then at some point, I kind of didn't understand what this was. And then, as I see on EWTN, you have this commercial with Mother Angelica that people switch into the TV, and then they see her, and then they end up converting. And it actually was almost like that for me. My ever first Catholic Mass I saw was from the chapel in EWTN. By accident, I ended up on YouTube on the Mass from here. So for me, being here now is actually quite emotional. It's been a trip to get to know with EWTN, but it's also been a pilgrimage on what led me to the church. Mm. So I was sitting and watching the Mass, and then after the Mass, in the algorithm of YouTube, they put up Fulton Sheen, a catechesis with him, where he said that if you have done something wrong, and if you don't go to confession, then you have a big problem. Mm. And he looked me in the eyes in this black and white bad color, and I felt he was talking to me. And that started a process for me on what you want to do with your life, how to go forward.
Now, you were raised Catholic?
A Protestant.
Well, what made you watch Mother Angelica in the first place?
I don't know.
You were looking for something.
Yeah, I ended up in the Mass, and then I came there. So I think for us to be able to do EWTN with Mother Angelica, with all of the people here being such a crucial part in my conversion, for me it's amazing. I'm so grateful of being allowed to be a part of the big EWTN family.
Right.
It's
right.
yeah. So and then after.
So, well, Fulton tells you to go to confession, but did you even know what confession
I had
was?
no idea. So then I waited a little bit. I found out where the church was and all this. And then it was a Wednesday. I found out that, okay, I can go to the church and say hi at least. And then I came to the church. There was a really old man. He had tobacco in all of his mouth, and he had a cross in his forehead, and he looked crazy. So that was then Ash Wednesday. It was the deacon there who was there. It was an old man, and then he came. Oh, what do you want? And my plan was to ask him to have a talk, but I was so scared. So the only thing I could say, where is the post office?
He had chewing tobacco?
Yes, chewing tobacco. But it looked really bad. So and then
sounds like a Norwegian sailor.
Yeah. But the funny thing was that I didn't know that at the point, but he translated a book by John of the Cross. His name was Deacon Gunnar Wiklund Hansen. So he actually translated the book that led me to come to the church, and I didn't know that. Yeah. And then I went away from there, and this was scary. And then at some point I found out it was Easter, and I couldn't go home to my family because I had to work. So then I found out that, okay, let's give it a new try to go to the Catholic Church. And that was then on Good Friday. So I came into the English Mass on Good Friday in the city of Bergen. And in the English Mass, there are mostly Filipinos. And you can see it on the podcast, but I'm tall and a large man. I'm close to 190, and the average Filipino is maybe 160, 170. Mm-hmm. So I was sitting in the church. Yeah. So I was sitting in the church, and I was much higher than everyone else. And when I first decided to go to the Mass, it was actually no Mass, because there is no Mass on Good Friday. And then the whole thing started. And I remember when we came to the adoring of the cross, is that what you call it? Then I found out that this is it. Yeah. In the time leading up to my finding of the Catholic Church, I have been involved in the Freemasons and other religious things, and all of them were appealing in the beginning, but over time they were just empty. Mm. But when people were kneeling down in front of the cross and kissing it in a naked church, because it was the beauty of the church that actually drew me there. So I like Mozart and I like all this classical music. So that was what I was expecting when I come to the Mass in Easter. It was completely naked. There was no music. It was open tabernacle. I didn't know what the tabernacle was, but it's in the church there it's very big and it was open, so I didn't understand what is there. Yeah. And remember when I knelt down, I didn't dare to kiss the cross, but I knelt down in front of it and I realized that this is actually the real deal. Mm. It's not alcohol, it's not girls, it's not money, it's not Freemasonry, it's not the Protestant church. This is the real thing. Mm-hmm. And that was for me beautiful, and that's 10 years ago now.
So your upbringing, you had some understanding of, you were in church, a Protestant church? Or?
Yeah, a little bit. I had a grandmother that at the time we just thought was strange, because she was always praying for us and she was crying when she was praying. Mm. And at that time I just think that it was strange, but she gave me, I went to Sunday school and I went to church maybe 5 or 6 times a year, something like that, with the family. But she gave me, for my Lutheran confirmation, she gave me a Bible as a present. Everyone else get money. We got money from everyone, and what am I going to do with the Bible? But then, from that point on, and when I was studying, I was moving a lot. And no matter what I did, the Bible just stick with me. Because every time I was moving, I was throwing a lot of things. And I should have thrown the Bible, because it didn't mean anything to me. But it was always there, and it's actually nice to have it there. So then when I started to go to school, I went to the Protestant church a little bit. But the Protestant church is, in Norway at least, it's sadly become a political party. I remember I was sitting there in the church one Sunday listening to the homily, and the priest was bragging about what a good year it had been for him. It was at the November or December of the year, end of the year. Because this year he had helped divorce more people than he had married. And then he was happy with himself. And I think that was...
Why would he be happy with more divorces?
Because he helped liberating the woman. I don't know. So then I just went up in the middle of the homily, and I left, because you can't say things like that. And that started the process leading up to the...
And somewhere in there you read John of the Cross, you said? Or?
Yes. The first time I came to Bergen, when I was 19, I had this Bible that I always ended up being with me. And then I been out. We had a big party, and we've been going on for a couple of days. And then I was tired, and I felt that I needed to relax a little bit. So I went to, that was the first time I went to a church after moving to where I went to school. And then there was a female Lutheran pastor, and I asked if I could talk to her. And she said, yeah. So after Mass, we took a cup of coffee, and I explained a little bit, because one of my biggest problem when I was doing my confirmation was that I didn't want to receive the Lutheran communion. I didn't know why, but I thought it was in a way disrespectful, because people were laughing in the communion queue and going more times, and I didn't like the setting. I talked to my priest about it, and we agreed that I could receive the confirmation, which in the Lutheran Church is not a sacrament. I could receive that without receiving Lutheran communion. And that bothered me a lot. And so I went to this priest in Bergen after the Mass, and I said to her, I moved to Bergen, I've been going a little bit to the church and all this thing, and now we have been out having a lot of fun and all these things. And you have this freshman week. I don't know if you have that in the US when you start college. And then she gave me a book of John of the Cross. The Dark Night or something. I don't know.
Dark Night of the Soul or something.
Yeah.
This is a Lutheran woman priest.
Yeah, gave me that book. So it's her fault that I'm sitting here, actually. And then now and then I read the book. And I still have the book. I was allowed to borrow it for her. I promised to give it back to her. And then she was moved away, and I got in touch with her 5 years ago and said that I still have your book. But then she gave it to me. So the book stuck with me, and I think what I was lacking in my life was the knowledge of the pain and the suffering. The life isn't perfect. The Catholic Church, or the communion, or the Mass, that's perfect. But our life is not perfect. We have to have suffering, and we will have suffering, because you cannot experience true love and joy if you don't have any suffering in your life. That I think is is actually is important. And that was what John of the Cross taught me. So when I had I've taken up in the church on his feast day, and then I took the name of Johannes, which is John in Norwegian, as my confirmation name, and I changed my name also because it was such a crucial part of my life, becoming Catholic. It has completely changed my life. I'm sitting here talking with you, which per definition should be impossible 15 years ago.
Well, I know it's striking to me that you had a life of a banker and pursuit of more and more, and it's John of the Cross, because he's got a tough message, right, about detachment, the cross, and I'm surprised that would appeal. But I guess if you bottomed out and experienced the emptiness of just the material life, I could see how that would appeal to you.
Yes, and he also, even though his books are dark, I don't know if you can say that, they're always filled with hope. Because all the suffering, imagine all the suffering Jesus did for us. And I also had, living a secular life, I had, when I started the process of being Catholic, and still goes on today, the sexual sins are so dominant in our society today, and we get tempted all the time, and the sexual sins are what in the end will destroy the family. And that is also something I think is very important when you see, I have the confirmation candidates, I'm teaching them at our parish, and I see how much trouble they have due to the sins of sexuality.
And these are teenagers.
Yeah. How much, but also for, I think that is something we as a church has to talk more about, also because family fathers like me, we all have this problem and temptation, and I think that is also something I learned from John of the Cross, that the temptation can also be one of the hardest cross to carry. But we have to stay together, and we have to be able to talk about the tough things also in life. But I think one of the reasons many marriages are destroyed has to do with sexuality in one way or another.
Right.
Especially when I was a banker and things like that, women for me was just an object brought there to give me pleasure, and that's far away from the Catholic marriage.
Yeah. Well, you're making me think too. I've got like when you read the sayings of light and love from John of the Cross, or I've got a book on my pray-to now that's a summary of his teaching and stuff, and there is a relief to it when you read, because he's talking a lot about detachment, and dying to yourself, and we get attached to things in this world, and they might be good things, but it's too much, we're focused on them too much. And it's like when I read him, the liberation is, oh yeah, that's right, that's not going to give me peace. It's like a relief that there's something more, because that kind of lack of fulfillment you find in giving time and energy to this stuff. It's like, that's not supposed to be everything for me, right? And I don't know, there's something about it when you read it. He says it beautifully, that it's just like a liberation, that a hope, like you said, hope. Yeah.
Because in the end, no matter, I think that we just finished Christmas now, and in our parish you have the Christmas crib, and if you look to the Christmas crib, you see the crucifix behind. It's placed behind, and I think that is such a beautiful picture. You have the newborn baby, you have the crucifix, and if you're sitting on the kneeler in front of the crib, you also see the tabernacle. So you have the whole thing there just in front of you. You have the baby, and we know all the suffering and the pain baby Jesus have to go through in order to get to the cross. And under him is the tabernacle, which is our hope, which is the thing that can bring us closer to him. Imagine we can be one with Jesus in the Holy Mass and receive it's beautiful.
You reminded me too. I know we, of course, we have our sisters up in Hansville. We serve up there at the shrine, and we have as a local community, the sister servants that we practically offer Mass for them every day. And the women religious, I think especially, they celebrate the Christ child in Christmas so beautifully. Women are just, they're mothers, and they just, and they, but when I see, because they'll always have like the child Jesus in the crib or something, and I see he's always like smiling, and it always kind of catches me off guard, because it's like, and there's something, it happened to me the other day at this local community, and I just saw the smiling baby Jesus, right? And it's like, there's something that's just like a relief. It just reminds you of the joy of Christianity, because on a natural level, there's the joy of the child, for every family, a blessing. Everybody can marvel at that. And then we marvel at how, oh yeah, I mean, God loves us and becomes a child for us. And I don't know, it just eases the burdens or the heaviness or the seriousness, or I take ourselves too seriously, or take our struggles or kind of maybe too much for us. And it just brings a lightness, a beauty to the faith.
And I also think that is the key in evangelization, and I think that is also the key in keeping people in church, or Catholic coming back to church, is to just show the joy and the beauty. Even though Joan of the Cross talks about all the suffering, but we are giving the biggest gift of them all, which we can find in the church. So we have to. Sometimes I think it's important to stop a little bit and be thankful for this amazing gift we have of the church. And for me in my spiritual life, one of my biggest challenges is to be thankful. Yesterday I went through a whole day without saying thank you to Jesus. Imagine that. He gave me a whole day and I didn't even remember to say thank you to him. So we have to focus on the good thing, the beauty, and also the gratitude of everything he gives us.
Right. Yeah, the Eucharist means thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The term means thanksgiving, and that's, it's interesting that we choose that to name our greatest prayer, the greatest part of the church, the Eucharist. And we were just coming off retreat, and the priest was giving us these conferences on Ignatian spirituality and how important that was to Saint Ignatius, this prayer of gratitude, like this prayer of examen. You start with gratitude and looking at times in your day that you recognize the blessings of God or his closeness to you. And this priest, retreat master, said too that we come to believe and see God's love for us, and how he was maybe present in our life, maybe how he gave us a consolation or whatever it was, blessed us with whatever. And I know, even like secular people are talking about gratitude. And as Christians, because I think so much of the challenge is to believe that we're loved by God.
Yeah. And we're good enough for God.
Yeah. Yeah. And making a gratitude list, you can say, God must love me because he did a lot of great things for me today. And I know some of our personalities maybe more than others, but we can just focus on the negative, the problem, and that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And say, wait a minute, God really did show up today. If you pause.
Yeah, and we also, I talk from myself, I pray that God will take care of my family and things like that. And then he takes care of them, but I don't say thank you.
Right.
So that it's important. So I remember I got a penance one from my priest back home, and that was to do two things in the morning. Now, one thing in the morning and one thing in the evening. It was to say, Jesus, I love you, as the first thing I say when I go to bed. And then say, Jesus, my friend, thank you for today. Good night, when I went to bed. And then he said I had to do it for, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, long enough for making it a habit. I think that was his
21 days.
Yeah.
That's what the secular tells.
But the gratitude of being a Catholic and the joy of being a Catholic. Imagine we have the fullness of the truth. Jesus came, God sent his son to us so that we can live forever. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Right. What do you tell that confirmation class? You're before like 13, 14 years old, and they're thinking maybe in a very materialistic way, and they're thinking in a very kind of self-sufficient, it's all about me way.
I will say we have chosen a different approach. My 5-year-old, she is also a teacher. So she's in every class. She's coming there with me.
You bring your 3-year-old to lead the prayer?
No, she and my wife and the newborn baby, they are making, we always have lunch. So they're making lunch. So they are there, and me and the 5-year-old, we are doing the confirmation class. But my 5-year-old, she is in charge of the praying, because we never managed to get these kids to learn Our Father and Hail Mary. That's obviously too much. But then we found out that we did it. We started last year. Then she was 4. So I said to them, if she can do it, you have to be able to do it. So she leads the prayer before we start and in the end. And she also have a test with them in the end of the year. And this, especially the mothers who have their son being corrected by a 4-year-old, next time they know Our Father, that you can be sure of. So first of all, what I hope they bring with them, for me it's, I shouldn't probably not say it, but it's not the most important thing that they know the 10 Commandments by heart and all that. What is important for me is to see that we are a family. Mm-hmm. We are doing this as a part of our vocation. Mm-hmm. Our kids feel at home in the church. They know where the sacristy is, they know where Jesus is. The 3-year-old, when we leave church, she always run in and she waved to Jesus and say, goodbye, see you soon. And that's beautiful. So my hope is that the confirmation candidates understand that the most important in church is family. Because when the family is destroyed, then we won't get more priests. So then the whole thing will not collapse, because Jesus promised he will take care of us. But in order to get priests and in order to have the church floating and expanding and showing its beauty, we need the family. And that is why I think also in the society today, it's the family who is under attack. In Norway and Europe, we have the situation with gay marriage. If my daughter, age 5, come home to me and say that she identify as a boy, it's illegal for me by law to tell her that she's a girl. So the attack and the gender is under the family and the gender is under an enormous attack. So that's my main thing to my confirmation candidate, is to try to show them the beauty of the church and the family. And then when we do the 6 commandments and all these things, I just start by giving them my email address, and I say, you can give this to your teacher. So if there is any complaint, she can write to me. But now I'm going to go against everything you're taught at school. But it normally work out fine. But they live in a completely different world. And the boys think they need to see a masculine church. They need to see that the Catholic Church is not only about their grandmother sitting and praying the rosary and crying. So the boys, they have to take turn being altar servants. In our parish we have only male altar servants. So they do that. And we celebrate the Mass quite close to what you do here at the daily Mass with the Latin and things like that, which is, I think, what the father of the council actually wanted. I think this is the way they wanted the new Mass to be celebrated. And then the girls, they also have their special role, and that is also the third most important thing for me when we teach and talk with the confirmation kids or the young people, is to try to show them that it actually matters what kind of gender you are, because in the church a man and a woman is equal. The greatest among all the people who ever lived was a woman, Virgin Mary. So, but God have different plans for us, and that is also the reason why a girl cannot become a priest. It's because that was not a part of God's plan. If he wanted that, he would have done that. But also why a man can't give birth. So in the society we have different roles that we have to fulfill. And if I look at the history of in Norway, before year 1000 we were worshipping Odin and Thor and all this thing, and then life didn't have any value. If you killed my brother, I could kill your brother, and we could go on forever. And they put babies out in the woods. And then Norway became Catholic for about 500 years. The first thing that happened was that it was illegal to kill babies. Instead of burning the smart woman, we made them into saints and let them develop. And then the Reformation came, and the first thing that happened was that the value of the woman was increased, and they started again to kill babies. So, and we see that in the society today, when this has been going on for 500 years, that abortion is, no one thinks about it as murder anymore. If I say to my confirmation candidates that, do you want to kill your grandmother? And all of them say no. Do you want to kill your uncle or your father and your mother? No, and then say no. Then what about killing a baby? No, you can't kill a baby. But then I try to ask them, what is a baby? When is it a human being? And that they don't understand that, because they don't understand that the baby inside the womb of the mother is actually a human being. It's a baby. And we do this evening prayer every day. And when my wife was pregnant, in one of the prayer, we were talking about who was present during the prayer. And I said that it was me and my wife, and we had some guests there. And then, of course, the baby in the stomach of my wife. And actually, the day after, the newspaper called me, the local newspaper, because for some reason he'd been listening to this. So he called me and asked if he could do an interview where I explained this thing with baby in the stomach being a human being. That he couldn't understand.
Great.
So then we got two pages in the newspaper, and we said that we tried to explain that for us all life matter, but for them it was completely strange. They couldn't understand that. It was a nice article in the end, but he could not understand how we could consider it a baby.
I know. I feel like sometimes you say, like, what happens? Like, all right, after they're born, then you cannot, and then but 5 minutes before, it's okay. It doesn't make any logical sense. It's like, I always like to make the point, I just grabbing this from a church document, but at the moment of conception, that child has its own DNA, it'll have its own blood type. A new life has begun. Distinct from the mother. It's not an organ of the mother. No. It's got a different blood type even, eventually. And it's like, but the DNA is set there too, in the beginning, and it has its own growth. And you cannot, has a dignity there that you can't end it.
Yeah, and I also think that many people have lost a child during pregnancy. We lost one baby, so we have 3 girls, and we have one in heaven. Then we can dispute if it's in heaven or not, but I believe so. But I think also to be open with that we lost a child. We didn't lose a thing or some cells, but my wife was pregnant and we were waiting a baby, and the baby died in the womb. I think that is important to acknowledge, and I think there is a lot of families, and especially a lot of women, feeling very sad because they lost a child in the womb. But the society today doesn't recognize it as a child. So then the person who loses the child, they don't have anyone to talk with. They just suppress the feeling. I don't think that's good at all.
Right. Maybe we could talk a little bit about like the culture of Norway. I didn't know anything about it before speaking with you, and you relayed to me how there's a big oil industry there, and it produces pretty good wealth, right, for the country. You all are doing well financially, and you have a lot of immigration. That you're saying that the Catholics comprise a lot of Eastern Europeans, right, have come like from Poland. And maybe tell us a little about that, the European influence.
First, I can start with the situation. Norway is a wealthy country, but the problem is when you get too wealthy, you don't need God. Because if you have everything you need, why should you pray for that?
It gives you an illusion of self-sufficiency.
Yeah. So Norway is a very secular country. The Protestant church are quite big, but that's because it's been a state church, and there has been a lot of grandmother insisting on baptism. But that's slowly going away. About 10 to 15 years ago, in Europe, it opened up for especially Polish to come and work in Europe. No, in Norway, but connected to the European Union. And then it happened something. The parish I'm a part of, we were at that point before the Polish came, we were maybe 1,000 people in the parish. And then in 10 years, it went up to 4,500, around that. That was mainly immigration. So in my parish, we are now between 4,500 and 5,000 people. And with 2 Norwegian parents, we are 8 Norwegian out of close to 5,000. So the amount of Norwegian is not big in the church. Then the Polish came. The Polish are very devout Catholics. One of the most beautiful things I see is when it's the Polish Mass on a Sunday, then there is a queue. Not a queue to get into the church, but to get to the confession booth. And that's a very strong sign it's a very important tool of evangelization towards us, Norwegian or Filipino or Lithuanian or whatever it will be, because we see that they take their faith seriously. So the devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus has grown very much the first Friday and now also the first Saturday. So we get a lot of influence. But in my parish, there are, I don't know the exact number now, but I would guess around 120 nationalities.
Whoa.
And then you're going to try to put all of this together.
Wow.
And that's very complicated.
And so they're there for the oil industry?
They're there, no, maybe most for the shipbuilding. At my point,
really?
they are building. They're working at the shipyard. We have a lot of shipyard in the area that I'm in.
Oh.
But also oil. But it's supply boats for the oil industry and things like that.
You'll have offshore drilling?
Yes, offshore, only offshore. And then we have a wind and water. We have a lot of water electricity made
Hydro.
by yeah.
Hydro.
So that's but the Polish has been very important for us because they have in practice witnessed that they take their faith seriously. In Norway, it's people look upon you as a little bit strange if you say that you're a practicing Christian. It's a little bit embarrassing. I remember the first time I put the picture out connecting me to the Catholic Church when I came out as a Catholic. and all the people, they start looking at me. And if
well, they say this kind of the only people still in the closet are the Christians.
yeah, that's true. And now that I meet people now, everyone knows what I'm doing. But if I meet people now, friends of me, and we have, which are not Christian, which I haven't said for 5 to 10 years, it's always the most embarrassing moment is when they are going to ask me if I want a glass of wine. Because they think that all Christians are not drinking wine and just sitting and praying and everything. Yeah. But also what the immigration has given us, which is very important, is that it is a counterweight to the secular society, especially when it comes to family, gender, marriage, and all these things. We are not completely alone. We have good brothers and sisters in Poland which are not afraid of saying that they believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. So we've seen that, and there's also in Europe it's a big discussion what German bishops are doing, and the church in Germany is paying maybe half of the bill for the church in Norway. So we're very connected to the German. We get a lot. They build all our churches and all these things, and it's difficult when it can seem like the church in Germany want to leave the Catholic faith. So we have a saying in Norway: "Are you with the Germans or are you with Pope Francis?" So it's a tough situation for us now because the church is getting politified, or the battle of the gender and the gay movement are closing in on the church, and it's very hard. And what we see is that they are very, very aggressive. That's actually been one of my main things coming here to the US, is that we have to send our TV signal from the US and not from Norway. Because if I do it from Norway, normal Catholic homily can be considered hate speech. And that it's changing the society into be extremely the polarization. We're taking away the focus from God and the beauty of the church, because we have these two groups. One group, in my opinion, which is teaching what the church always have taught, that the marriage is between a man and a woman. And then you have this group, normally of converts in Norway, which want to change the church. And that brings me back to what my parish priest said when I converted, that the Catholic Church it's not a supermarket. You can't pick and choose. It is a package. This is if you're going to convert to the Catholic Church, you have to accept this. If not, go somewhere else. And he also told me that what was true yesterday is true today and forever will be true. That is the big fight now in Norway and also in Europe, that they want to change the church to go away from its teaching.
And how would you describe like the Norwegian culture itself? Not putting the immigration aside, but I always like to me it's always interesting, like the different countries, like the enculturation of the faith. it's expressed differently in all these different cultures. And I know you were sharing with me earlier that you're on this island and you fish once a week. You catch cod and mackerel. That's my impression, stereotype. Those cold water fish you're pulling out, bitterly cold. You're bundled up and fishing. And but anyway, that's what do you think is the cultural gift of Catholicism?
A little bit. It's divided into. You have the people living in the cities, where masculinity is under attack, and then you have us who live outside of the city, which is probably more the stereotype of what foreigners think of when they think about Norway. We live on an island. I think I had coffee with Father Mitch. I think he would love it there because there is a lot of animals and things that you can hunt, and you have fish in the water. We're close to the nature.
Is there a lot of trees on your island? Or?
Oh yes, we are self-provided by wood.
Oh, really? Do you have like a wood fireplace?
Yes, we use that. Okay. Because of we have the problem with the inflation, so the electricity have become very expensive. So now we go back to using wood. So, but for us, it's also I think that is something which is important to give to the children is the freedom. I remember when we had COVID, the whole thing closed down, the whole country, and then we were living in an apartment. And it's not easy to have at that point 2 and a 4-year-old or 1 or 3-year-old during COVID and being inside an apartment. When we came out there, they can run around. There is the woman we bought the house from. She has been living there for 60 years, and she never locked the door. So it was always open. So it's the Norwegian mentality is deeply connected to the nature. We go on hikes and things like that. And I also think that most Norwegians are proud of our country. We think it's beautiful. We think we're an open, or at least I like to think that we are an open type of people. We invite people in. And the biggest room in every house, normally when we have a house, it's open kitchen and living room and dining room. So you can all be together. So the house center around the kitchen. So the food is important.
And speed skating?
Oh, yeah, not where I am, but the long speed skating is Norway and Netherlands who do. So it's a lot of that, and you have the snow, and this year it's been quite a lot of snow even in the island where I live. It's a little bit hotter there because it's on the coast. But now we had 3 weeks of snow, and the girls, they go out for in the kindergarten. They have their snow mobiles, or what you call it, and they're outside a lot. And what is also special at our place is that we have a great population of eagles. So we have the eagles going around our.
And they fish right out of the sea and grab. That must be spectacular. Right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And normally, all the kids when they are small, like our newborn, they for the first year during daytime they sleep outside. We put clothes on them. Even in the winter, we just put some warm clothes on them, and then they sleep in trellis outside. But on this island, because of all the eagles, we actually have to have something over so the eagles don't come and take that. Oh, that's nice.
And you do that for health, you think, or is it?
Yes, and they sleep better as long as they don't freeze. But I remember when my wife, when we got the kid, she was born in the first kid was born in August, and then then it was summer, so we were sleeping outside. And then it started to snow, and I put the baby outside, and she come yelling at me, "What are you doing?" but that I think is we have always done it. We also sleep. I have the window open in my bedroom or our bedroom, so I think it's fresh air. some salt in it, especially when we're in the sea. It's good.
Yeah, that must be neat, blowing off the ocean and stuff. That.
Uh,
And you talk about masculinity being under attack. How would you describe that attack in Norway?
just go in a shopping mall on a Saturday and see how it's difficult to see if it's a boy or a girl anymore. But although we saw that in the newspaper, especially during the time of President Trump, the Norwegian newspaper had clearly an agenda. They weren't too happy about him and his politics. So then everything that was masculine was in a way connected to American politics.
Right.
And that's sad. And over time we have this thing with the gender. Now they have legalized the third gender, which I'm a little bit unsure what is. It's something in between probably. And I remember when we were kids, we were building small huts up in the woods, and we were boys, so we had a fight and things like that. That would be completely unacceptable now. And also, I think one of the most masculine things you can do is to show emotions. If you actually cry, that's an extremely masculine thing to do.
When you were growing up?
Also now. Yeah. If I'm able to show emotions, that's masculinity.
Right.
Many people think that masculinity is just to be angry. Oh, I'm a dad, or you do what I'm saying. But masculinity is also to be connected with your own feelings. But the biggest problem in the end is that there is no longer an accept for. They think that equality means that we are all going to do the same, and that's not being equal, in my opinion. So it has been a lot of, like in the Lutheran Church, all the bishops end up being. You get excluded almost by being a man. So and we also have a law that so and so many % of a board has to be women. So it doesn't have anything to say if you have the qualification or not. Right. The qualification of being a woman is more important than your background and what you've done earlier in your life. And then they are taught in school that, I remember we had this, after the COVID thing, we got a survey where we had to fill in. And then one of the questions was, what gender did the doctor assign you when you were born? And then the next question was, do you identify as the same gender still? And that was a question of whether or not I had a headache after having COVID. It's completely crazy. But they always push this in, and they also in the school they have this. They are taught to question their own gender. They have to. It's not. You're not a boy. You have to find out that you are a boy. And when society is more feminine, where you don't have we have a saying, boys will be boys, or something like that in Norwegian. I don't know if you have it in English. Yeah. But when you're not allowing the boys to be boys, then over time they don't, and that you will see when they become father and husbands, they don't know how to take control anymore.
Right.
Because they're not used to that.
Right. Where does that ideology come from? You can look in this country, you can see like the huge impact universities in the 60s had with the great liberalization and stuff. And it just seemed like the universities were run by people of liberal persuasion, so to speak. But is that the same is true in Norway, or where did it come from?
Yes, in many ways. And then they also, they've been very good in doing lobby work and getting in good positions.
So politically.
Yeah.
I know my impression, is it more of a socialist country or?
That's actually a good question. I haven't thought about that, but I think it's been a clear, and yes, it's a political issue, first of all. It's been a clear agenda for the ruling parties the last 20 years. And I remember Pope Benedict, he died recently, and we were discussing, in the newspaper in Norway, they were writing that Pope Benedict, after the Second Vatican Council, he became extremely conservative during the 80s and the 90s. And then I was reflecting a little bit about that. Did he change his writing, or did he just mean the same all the time? He was consistent. And that was the answer. He didn't, or at least for me, he didn't change the way he was thinking, but society completely changed the way they were thinking. So being orthodox or conservative made you, if you didn't change your perspective of things and you had a status quo, you went from being mainstream to being an activist in 20 years.
Yeah.
So for us in Europe or in Norway, it's been something that the politician wants, and it's been pushed by law, and you have these lobby groups working to change the law, because I don't think they get much more attention than they should compare on how many people we're talking about. And now it's legal actually for a 12-year-old in Norway to change the gender without having the consent of the parents.
Like surgeries, hormones? Whoa. Yeah.
Before entering puberty. And that's, I think that's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
my impression is, like a bigger government, more government control, and it seemed like they can push that. And I think in America, you see like our big corporations are 100% into this social agenda, and they're pushing it like from the more free market side that, seemingly has similar results, but that's...
I don't know if you have it in the US, but we have this Pride March.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't support that as Catholic. It's not possible to be a Catholic and support Pride, the ideology that they are promoting. In Norway, it's sorry for the language, but it's a sex exhibition. It's terrible. So we tried to not shop in the stores that have a pride flag. We tried to not do that. And that was also I didn't say that earlier, but one of the main reasons for us to start the radio, I was working in an insurance company before we took the chance of doing the radio. My wife was pregnant with our first child, maybe 6 months or something. Because the baby is born in August, and the Pride Month is in Norway. That year was in May. And then the bank and the insurance company I was working in became the main sponsor of this Pride week. And then they came and put the Pride flag on my desk, that you have to have that. And then I called my wife, and she didn't have a job at that point, and I said that I have to have a Pride flag on my desk. What do you want me to do? And she said, then you have either they take it away or you have to quit. And I said, you're sure about that? Yes, I'm not letting you back in if you have a Pride flag on your desk. And then I went to my boss and I said, I can't have this. You can have it in the room, but I can't have it on my desk. And then she said that, they made an arrangement so everyone in the company had to have this on their desk. And I said, well, because of religious freedom and all this, I can't do this. And she said, yes. And I wrote to the HR department saying, I'm sorry, but because of my belief, I cannot have this symbol on my desk. And I just got back. I'm sorry, but you have to do that. And okay, and I called my wife. I have to have it. You still want, what do you want me to do? She said that if you come back, I will not serve you dinner and you have to sleep on the sofa as long as you have that there. So then 3 months before we were going to give our first child, I quit my job. And they paid me 1 month, and then we were sitting there, what to do now? And then, of course, God take care of us. And that led us into being able to do Catholic radio full time.
Wow.
So,
did you pick up another job?
yes, I took a temporary job for 6 months before I started. We did the radio full time. So it gave us actually the opportunity to do radio. So EWTN Norway wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the Pride movement. So that's kind of a way to show that even the darkest situation, God makes something good out of.
You know, the United States, I was reading that more women are going to college now, getting degrees, graduate degrees, have driver's license, and they're actually making more than men into their like mid-30s, and then something like men are taking on like higher management positions, and then they make more. But I think we have a crisis in masculinity of falling behind, and I don't know where that. I don't know. People have all kinds of explanations, but is that the same? And
the women are doing better at school. The boys are having problem concentrating, and we talked about this a lot in our parish, and we will try to do the Boy Scouts in order to kind of build up, and we do man groups, groups where we can sit and talk about man issues.
Has that helped? Or?
Yeah, for me it helped. I would love that there would be much more people, but I think it's important to acknowledge that I, as a man, has different problem than my wife as a woman. And I don't think that is racism or whatever you call it. Yeah, sexism. It's not that, but it's just we have different needs, and I'm convinced that God made us that way, and it's not everything that. It's something is good to talk with the boys about, that we can sit down and we can go fishing or just be a group of men talking about the faith. And I think that's an excellent way to evangelize also. If we have guests who are not Catholics, to divide them into group of men and women where we can do things. And the men are at our house, because I like to make food, we change on doing the food. So it's not that the women has to be in the kitchen and the men go out fishing the fish. That's not the point. But we have different needs. And I also think that the women, like my wife after giving birth, and it's important for her to also talk with women about women things. Much better than me, because I don't think I would understand them in the same way. So to restore that I think I was in the gift shop here, and you have these masculine rosaries, and you have the beautiful one also. I think it's important.
I think men are kind of ordered to like challenge, and it seems like they respond to doing. I know a priest that he just started a St. Joseph's group. He called it like after the Saturday morning mass, men would get together and do maintenance on the parish and stuff, and have a project. And I think too, like with the school, school is not real life, and it seemed like men kind of. You got to sit in a desk and listen to lectures and all this kind of stuff. I think men need to be able to do that and everything, but I could see how they're kind of more energetic. I came from like an engineering background, and it's like, I can remember being in the lab and just like things just came alive, and You could see it concretely and do some
Yeah.
experiment. It was exciting and all that stuff. And so academically, I think that kind of challenge and everything, needs to be there for the men. And I can remember being I think I was like in 5th grade, and I remember being in math class, and at one point we broke up into these little groups of like 4 or 5 boys, and we were given these problems to work, and we got into this competition.
Yeah.
Like we just kind of tore at it as soon as it was like competitive. It was like, man, all of a sudden I remember being focused, and you were like, you didn't want the guy next to you to get ahead of you and all this kind of stuff. But I remember it was like this huge stimulation. It's like it really got my attention even back then. But I was going to say, yeah, with men being together, I think the men's groups are so important. And I tell older men that when I can have an opportunity, the importance of mentoring and just the word today, accompanying other men or just drawing up close. And I think because that's like really where the male gift package comes in to help guide like a teenager, someone in college, someone leaving college, to like navigate life. This is how you do it, and stuff.
Yes, and I think that is also with all the pornography and all these things that are out there. I think it's easier for a man to talk to a man about these things than to talk to your wife about it.
Right.
You can't go to your, or of course you should, but it's harder to go to your wife. So I think all these things are connected. And I also see that with this confirmation class that we teach, that there is a difference between a boy age 13 and a girl age 13 in how mature they are and all these things. And for my own sake, I don't know how to write. I'm dyslexic. So that in my early year at school, that was always very hard to admit because there was a lot of girls there, and I wouldn't tell them that I didn't know how to read and write. But I came into that had nothing to do with the church to do, but I came into a group of men or young boys. It was through a type of Boy Scout, where we managed to talk about these things in a safe environment where we didn't have to impress all the women with all the hormones we had running around. And that made me safe and secure enough to admit it. And I've been going around before I started this, I went around when I was working in bank and insurance, having talks, and I always started with misspelling my name as a joke to just show them that in the next foils there will be a lot of misspelling, but there's half of it. And I had my bishop name. His is Bishop Erik, and my wife's name is is Erika. And I remember 2 years ago when he were ordained a bishop, I was going to write him an email explaining our project and try to tell him that he should support this. And I was working on this email for 3-4 hours, changing the sentence, and then I was happy, and then I pressed send. And then when I went back and read it, it said, "Dear Bishop Erika." But I think that the men's group and being in a safe environment do so that you get more secure about yourself.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for me, because it's given me so much.
And I don't know how it works for women as much, but I know for men, I think it's like this very keenly felt need that we look to other men, like older men, to what it means to be a man, how to be masculine. Because there's something about masculinity that's acquired. I think women are kind of more set. You're born, you're naturally close to your mother. The boy child has got to eventually attach to the father because that's who he's like. And I think that whole movement continues long into their life. And because I just remember, I was a Boy Scout. I remember looking at like the troop leaders and stuff on, when you're in a camp out, you're hiking, like going out for a week or something, you get to know this guy well, right? Yeah. And I can remember the impressions and things that I felt being around them. I remember uncles in my family, of course, my own father, But like the great uncle, I knew some great uncles very well in my family, and they had a big impact on me of what it means to be a man, how you're to act and carry yourself and things.
Yeah, and that is the biggest problem, I think, with the divorce is that many kids lose their father figure because they end up, in many cases, living with their mother.
Right.
So they don't have the contact with their father. They don't see the masculinity. That I also see with the girls who are doing their confirmation classes, that they come and ask me questions they should ask their father.
Right.
They shouldn't ask me this kind of question.
Right.
But they don't have a father figure in their life who they can talk to about these things. And that's sad.
And, you know, now that I'm even saying that out loud, too, it's like we're talking about, you know, just, your parents being separated. And now, too, like, families are smaller. So you're not going to have as many uncles and things like that to witness. But, just in my own life, my extended family made a big impression on me. And they were all down. I grew up in Alabama. They were all down in New Orleans. But my grandmother especially was big in the family and would make sure we were connected to these people and would always be, she was like kind of at the center and always drawing extended family into the home, into the the Christmas, Thanksgiving celebrations and everything. And that's powerful too, when you see multiple versions of masculinity,
I remember my grandfather, he had a hut outside of where we lived. And that was our childhood paradise. It was enormous. It had an enormous lake, and there was a waterfall and everything. That was how I remember it. And there we went, and we were doing carpenting thing with him, painting. Yeah. And then he died, and 15 years later, I came back. And it's the smallest hut I ever seen in my life. It was nothing like I remember. But this... And it's like, I think about it now. Then you said, when I think back to my childhood, what I'm thinking about is my father and my grandfather and my uncle, how they helped us when we needed it.
Right.
I could always know, I always knew, and I still do, that if I need help, I can go to my father. I can't go to my grandfather because he's not alive anymore. But and that is because during our childhood, he was the stronghold. He was, when everything was going bad, we knew we could go to him. He was the protector of the family.
Right.
And if you don't have a father, and if you take away the masculinity, then you don't have that anymore.
Yeah. And I know we're going pretty long here, but let me ask you too about the relationship in marriage, that the complementarity between the man and the wife, the man and woman. You've mentioned it, several times now, the influence of your wife. How does that make you a better man?
My wife is, in every sense, an amazing woman, because everything I do, I can do because she approve it.
Supports it.
And it's also a vocation for her. Our baby is born, I think it's 45 days now, and I've been able to spend a week here because it's something that was important for us. It's important for our vocation to do the radio. But I think you have to begin with what a marriage is, because a marriage is a union between a man and a woman until we die. That's the premise of, or one of us die. And we had a lot of ups and downs in our marriage. And if we didn't have a Catholic marriage, I'm sure we wouldn't still be married if we didn't have our faith. Because if you don't believe that the marriage is lifelong, then when you get problems, it's much, much easier to just split up and do something else. But I remember when right before we got married in Hungary, so we had our priest doing the paper. And the last thing he said before we went was good luck and all this thing. And I have made sure you will never get an annulment. And that was it. So as long as I live, you will never ever get an annulment. And that means that no matter, we have chosen this, and it's not, every day is not good, but most of the days are good.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine a life without my wife, because I was thinking about that before we got married, two become one. Well, yeah, it's the babies and this thing, but that we two become, me and my wife become one in marriage, for me, as we grown in marriage, has nothing to do with the sexuality at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a smaller part, but it has to do that we are here together, and we have a vocation which is, first of all, our family, then it's the EWTN project. Mm-hmm. And we have to find a way to make this work. Mm-hmm. And I think that because we try to go to confession once a week. On Sunday we go to confession before Mass. She goes every 14 days because she's better than me. So, but that we have the faith together, that we do things as a family. I was working for EWTN at the World Meeting of Family in Rome. For me, it was most natural thing to bring my family. Mm-hmm. That we go there together. If we are going to record a show or something somewhere, we go all the family together. And that, being a Catholic minority in Norway, also I think bring us closer, because we don't have too many Catholic friends we can talk about things, and that kind of forces us to talk about things together. Right. And every time I try to hide something from my wife, it always ends in a catastrophe with me having to say that I'm sorry. so I think that is two becoming one. That you grow together, and what started with a kind of a temporarily love because we liked each other, and this was it has grown with and maybe that's the sacrament of marriage that is growing. That the grace of a Catholic marriage is that we grow together into a unity. We become one. We have a goal together. We still have our separate lives with friends and things like that, but the family is the number one. And we don't call our wedding day our wedding day. We call it, with the kids, we celebrate the birthday of our family. So I can't explain to you what my wife means to me, and because without her, absolutely nothing would be possible. I wouldn't have my children without her. Yeah.
You know, something comes to mind too. You talk about like the deepening of the love and the growing of the union. It reminds me of how we began the conversation with St. John of the Cross, and how that sacrificial love is where it really becomes real and uniting. And
but just imagine how much she must love me, man. She's at home with 3 kids, and I can be here going to Mass every day.
Yeah.
That's for me, that shows. For her, it's a big sacrifice. I get all the fun, and she has to stay at home. Yeah. So probably I have to do a little bit more next week. But but it's the beauty of the marriage. It's the beauty of being together about something. And I think that also, I see that with my friends. Maybe what some marriages lack is a goal to work together, towards together. And one goal is, of course, family, but you should have something else than a family to work towards. Because it is really good when the kid's been crying a whole night to do something different that doesn't have to do with the family. To record a podcast, we read the Liturgy of the Hours together, to grow in our spirituality. And she is a harsh, strong Catholic woman, so she is also very strict on the fact that we go to church together. If I try to go here, I remember before I left here, it was a feast day, holiday of obligation, and I didn't have any clean socks. So I came and asked her, can you put on some socks so I have socks when we go to the US? And she said, no, we're not washing on a holiday of obligation. so that I had to go on the airport to buy new socks. So that also has to do with the roles in the family, because that she helps me with these things. It's her role. It's not her role to wash, but it's her role to take care of the house, the family. And it's my responsibility to take care of that the children grow in their faith. And,
I think the women have that great sensitivity to like what's going on in the family, the needs and stuff. And sometimes can point it out to the father if he's missing something. And
yes, and when earlier we talked about being grateful. For some reason, for some magical reason, there are always clean shirts in my wardrobe. I don't know how they're getting that, but that is also an important part of the marriage, which I'm failing in every day, is actually to show her the appreciation of the work she's doing for the family. That things I take for granted, there are food on the table at 4 o'clock. It's It's beautiful.
Gratitude.
Yes.
Full circle. Gratitude. Well, Paul, thank you so much for this talk. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you for having me.